Alrighty, y'all. So today I want to do a very quick review of The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, the second film in the Hobbit trilogy. I recently got the chance to revisit it and wanted to give you my thoughts on this film. So I reviewed the first one a little while ago, and I really enjoyed the first one. I thought it wasn't perfect, and I felt like it was definitely padding things out. Now, to continue with this movie, it is pretty much the same issues that I had with the last one. Padding issues, pacing issues, and a lot of other things as well. But I do think overall, for a very quick opinion of it, I did like it. I like this film for many different reasons. Is it as good as the first one? I would say it's a little bit more on par with the first one, even though I will say it kind of evens out because there's elements of this movie I really don't like, but there's also elements that elevate it up. So I would say it's similar to quality to the first one, which is it's pretty decent to good. Now I'm going to start with my pros and my cons. And this obviously continues from the story that was established in the first movie. Obviously, this whole trilogy of movies was adapting The Hobbit. And I feel like really when it gets into the second movie, you can really feel the padding issues. But it started with some huge pros. For one, we got our first reveal of Smaug the dragon. Now, he was teased in the first movie, and now he's finally revealed. And I gotta say, he's brilliant. He is absolutely brilliant. I was kind of curious how Peter Jackson would do it just because I remember watching the 70s animated film, which I think the voice actor did a great job in that one, and Smaug was decent in that one, so I was kind of curious in live action, how would he work? And I think he's really great in this movie. His design is fantastic. He looks like a very cool, big, massive, intimidating dragon. I think in particular, I love his face sculpt and his head. That's my favorite part of the design. It also features things, too, that I think the original 70s cartoon I didn't really enjoy too much. Like, the 70s cartoon version had, like, a bunch of hair on him, and I just felt that was very strange for a dragon to have. Well, this version totally gets rid of that and just goes for a more traditional dragon look. And I have to really appreciate that. I really enjoy the fact that Smaug just looks great. The voice actor, too, which I think is Benedict Cumberbatch in this movie, he does a really great job as Smaug. I thought that his voice was intimidating. It seemed like they used some like audio effects to make his voice sound big and more imposing. Really great stuff. And I thought, too, I think they apparently used some motion capture, and I could probably tell just because the dragon does have some really cool expressions to his face. And just all the scenes with him, especially in Erebor, are really great. He's the highlight of the movie. I love the scenes where he's talking to Bilbo. It's really cool stuff. And even when there's action involved, you could just get the sense of how big and massive in terms of scale he is. And I like how he's really well shot. So yeah, he's the highlight of the movie. And there's a lot of things from the book, too, that I really enjoy seeing in this movie. For example, Bilbo getting captured by the elves. That's a thing in this story. Not too bad seeing the elves. They were established in the first movie, so seeing them here obviously is pretty natural. And, pretty interesting and stuff. And we also got, of course, the more infamous barrel chase scene, which a lot of people have complained about. I would say it's not as goofy or as campy as that first movie's goblin scene where you had those dwarves running through the goblin lair, killing orcs. I want to say goblins, but they killing orcs left and right, and that was really goofy and campy looking. This one is goofy and campy, but it's like it feels, I don't know, it feels like it was maybe intended to be that way. But I don't know, I felt like it was a fun scene, and it didn't ruin too much of the movie. There's also an extended spider scene, which I don't know if that even happens in the book, but, like I said, it's a pretty cool scene. I didn't mind it. I do think it goes on for a bit too long, here and there. Now, we also got some other follow-up elements from the previous movie. The subplot of Gandalf figuring out that there's darker forces coming, that there's a plot beneath the plot, so to speak, that's happening. eventually discovering that the necromancer in the ancient fortress, the forces behind all this is Saruman. He's trying to come back into Middle Earth, and of course he's looking for his powerful ring. And that was a really good scene. I really enjoyed it. I do think it goes on for a bit too long, but I did like a little bit of that subplot. I know people might complain about it because none of this was in the book, but I didn't mind some of the setup for the Lord of the Rings here. Like, I don't think it's as egregious as like some other prequels make it out to be. I also thought that Lake Town was done pretty well here, which we got some more expanded backstory for it. Like, there's some kind of corrupt king and an evil minister servant guy next to him. We also got a little bit more information on Bard, who I think does a little bit more here than he does in the book. And Lake Town in general is just more expanded, and I really like the look of it. We also have Legolas here, who obviously, if you know Lord of the Rings, he was in that trilogy of movies. He's back here. And I mean, yeah, it's cool to see a familiar face. Even I do feel like, I'm going to get into my cons a little bit with this, he doesn't really serve any purpose, really, in the movie. Like, he could have been cut out, and I think The Hobbit would have been the same. It was a little bit strange, but like I said, it's cool to see a familiar face, I guess. And the new character that's sided with him, I think her name is Therial or Theria. I can't remember her name. She's the elf lady. I mean, she was fine. I always actually had to look up. I was like, am I confused? Was she a character from The Hobbit I missed or don't remember? And no, she wasn't. She was a character made for the movie. And I mean, she's okay. The actress who plays her does an okay job. But, you know, I'll get into some of my cons later with this whole elf thing that's going on with the story here. I do think it kind of detracts from the movie. In terms of action, I think the action is pretty solid. Like I said, people complain about the barrel chase scene a lot. I didn't mind it too much. Some of the action felt pretty cool with the elves. I really did like, too, the Legolas fight in Lake Town with some of the orcs. That was pretty cool. I like the fight, too, with Gandalf and the dark forces of Sauron. Sorry, probably saying that wrong. You know, I liked a lot of the action sequences. I liked also the dwarves fighting Smaug, which I don't know if that even happens in the book. I'm just trying to be honest here. I think Bilbo just talks to Smaug, and Smaug just assumes he's from Lake Town and goes destroy it. While in the movie, there's kind of this huge, elaborate, extended scene where the dwarves are all fighting Smaug with this pretty elaborate plan to cover him in like super hot, gold, which obviously doesn't work. He's a really impenetrable dragon, so that doesn't work. And I think if it's established a cliffhanger, he jumps up out of petty revenge to destroy Lake Town, and that's how the movie ends, which I actually did like the cliffhanger more in this movie than I did in the last movie. The last movie just kind of ends, and for whatever reason, there's some time after that we get in the second movie, which 12 months later, which I'm not sure if even that happens in the book. But that being said, Smaug, leaving to destroy Lake Town, that's a pretty cool and really, really intense cliffhanger for the third movie. I know a lot of people complain about the third movie, but I did like how this movie ended. It ended on a very sour note, which is, I think how it should be. But, like I said, I did like some of the action sequences. I think the pacing was a little bit better here. It felt like a more faster watch, even though the movie is roughly the same amount of time. And, I think all the performances are good. In terms of CGI, I still think it's hit and miss in this movie. I think all the scenes with Smaug and Erebor look great. Like, I can really tell they put the majority of their efforts into that. The barrel scene, there's some really hit and miss CGI here and there. The spider scene, I think, is mostly well done, but there's some hit and miss CGI. And I think the thing is like when they start to get more goofy and do more elaborate things, and especially when a lot of characters are on screen, I think that's when the CGI starts to suffer a bit. That was a big problem with the first movie. Like I said, it's not a huge detraction for these movies for me, because I don't mind. Like I said, these stories are inherently a little bit campy. I mean, they're fantasy stories. But, I just do think the CGI is still a little bit hit and miss. Overall, still not horrible, totally watchable, still good quality. And I mean, I'm sure for 2013 when this came out, it was pretty decent quality. All the performances are really good. Ian McKellen's Gandalf does a pretty good job. The guy who the guy, I can't remember his name, but the guy that got to play young Bilbo Baggins is great. I like most of the dwarf actors. I think they give performances that are really good here for the most part. So I don't really have too many complaints about the performances. Ironically, though, I said in the first movie my favorite performance was Bilbo. He does a really good job here, but I feel like the Smaug really steals the performance in this movie. I actually think Benedict Cumberbatch he's the performance of the movie for me. He does a great job as the character. Yeah, now let's get into some of my cons with the Desolation of Smaug. Well, like I mentioned earlier, I think the movie kind of starts to, number one, the padding gets a bit, you start to really feel it in this movie. There's some action sequences that could have been cut down. Like, I don't mind the barrel chase scene, but I think it goes on for a bit too long. It could have been cut down. There's also some extended fight scenes with, like, Gandalf fighting the forces of Sauron. That could have been cut down a bit. The spider scene, in my opinion, could have been heavily cut down. There's all these elaborate fight scenes and sequences and stuff that are really cool, but it's just like they're extended because I think they're just used to pad out the film's runtime. And especially when the elves get involved, and then this new character, this female elf, and there's kind of a hinted romance with her and one of the dwarves, I think Keeley is his name, from the group that's heading to the mountain. And I felt like that was really out of place. I think that was unnecessary. I was just like, I know that wasn't in the book, and because the character herself is not, the female elf character is not even in the book itself. So I felt like that really distracted from the movie. I think that was the weakest part of the story narratively. I was just like, what the heck is this? It really detracts from it. And I mentioned Legolas earlier, and I'm going to be honest here. It's great that the actor came back, and I think he mostly looks great in the role still, but he serves no purpose in this movie. Like, he kind of shows up, and I think this would have been okay if maybe it was like a cameo kind of role, but then he kind of just sort of, teams up with the female elf character, and they're fighting orcs because they sense there's a darker presence at work, and they want to stop it. But, I mean, it's kind of a vague objective, and it just, like I said, seems like an excuse to have Legolas in this movie. And, yeah, I mean, like I said before, he just doesn't really serve any purpose and could have easily been a cameo, like I mentioned. I just feel kind of strange. There's not much for him to do, and I don't really think he needs to be here. And just in general, the whole elf subplot, especially with the female elf and the dwarf Keeley, and that whole thing too with him getting poisoned by the orc arrow, and then him having to go into Lake Town and having to stay behind, and then all the little dwarves and the female elf fighting off the orcs that are coming to look for Oakenshield, and then they also have to get the poison out and save Keeley. It just all kind of drags down the movie. And it feels unnecessary to the main story, which is Bilbo Baggins and the dwarves and Erebor and Smaug. And like I said before, I'm pretty sure most of that other elf stuff wasn't in the book. I'm just assuming. I haven't read the book in a very, very, very long time, if at all. So yeah, I think those parts of the movie, really drag it down. You can really feel the padding. Like I said, they're kind of just stretching this stuff out to make it a 3-hour movie. And this easily could have been maybe a 2.5-hour movie, maybe like 2-hour movie if they really cut down a lot of stuff. But yeah, those are some of my main criticisms with The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug from 2013, directed by Peter Jackson. Overall, I still think it's a pretty decent film. It's a decent follow-up to the first one. The highlights are definitely Smaug, and I think it definitely ends in a really good place. I just think a lot of the films, some of the film's plots and subplots really drag the movie's pacing and feel unnecessary and could have easily been cut out. And I also want to mention, too, for this review, I did watch a theatrical version, which I'm going to do for all of these Lord of the Rings and Hobbit films. If y'all want me to review the extended versions, definitely let me know in the comments. But yeah, that's my thoughts on The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. Overall, decent film, and overall pretty solid. Now I'm going to talk about and review the third film pretty soon, and give you my thoughts on the finale of the Hobbit trilogy. All right, y'all. Hopefully you have a good day, and peace, y'all.